The set-piece debates are over. The campaign buses are making their final journeys, and the UK is bracing for what could be a day of historic drama. On July 4th, millions of UK voters will go to the polls. Thursday is D-Day for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who presides over a government that has been rejected by record numbers of voters, according to opinion polls. Sunak's party, that's the Conservative Party, is trailing. The Tories are behind the Labour Party by about 20%, so Sunak is doing everything he can to garner support. After all, he vowed to fight for every vote when he called for an early election in his rain-soaked speech.
Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
The early election was somewhat of a surprise. In the UK, a Prime Minister can call an election whenever they want, as long as there is one every 5 years. The last election was in 2019, so Sunak had to call the next one before the end of this year, and he chose July 4th. The recency of the date has confused and aggravated Tory members. But the Labour MPs are happy. This benefits their case, because the Tories are wildly unpopular. They have lost more than half of their support. Some projections say that the Conservatives will get below 100 seats, what many are calling an extinction-level event. We'll tell you why the Tories are in trouble, why Labour is expecting a record swing, the choices on offer, and the issues at hand. But first, let's unpack the basics. The general election in the UK is to elect members of Parliament to the House of Commons. The UK is divided into 650 areas. These are called constituencies. Each of them will elect one MP. This year, a record number of candidates, more than 4,000, are campaigning. Some are independent, but most of the candidates represent a political party. And what are the major parties? First, the Conservative Party. It's Britain's oldest and most electorally successful party. It has ruled the country for the last 14 years, in what's been a roller coaster ride. Let's understand it better. In these last 14 years, the Tories have had 5 different prime ministers. First, there was David Cameron. He is infamous for calling the Brexit referendum and introducing massive budget cuts. More on that later. Then there was Theresa May, who was left to deal with the Brexit fallout. Then came Boris Johnson. He got Brexit done, but his reign brought a gross mishandling of the Wuhan virus pandemic. Johnson was followed by Elizabeth Liz Truss, who had the shortest tenure ever as a UK PM. She resigned on her 50th day in office, paving the way for none other than Rishi Sunak. Now, Sunak has never been popular. Many believe him to be detached from reality. After all, he has more money than the king. A history of gaffes has not helped his case either. But this is not just about Sunak. It's about the broken throne that he was handed. Thanks to Brexit, trading goods within the EU is difficult now. So Brexit is costing the UK $124 billion annually. The austerity measures that Cameron once took continue to haunt the UK. The social safety net has been obliterated, and the most vulnerable are the most harmed. This has formed the basis of some of the key issues in this election. Case in point, the National Health Service. Its waiting lists are at all-time highs. The official number of people waiting for treatment stood at 7.6 million in April this year. Then there is the housing crisis. It has seen rising property prices, rent hikes, and a shortage of social housing, which rose by 89% in the last decade. Immigration has been a heated election issue as well. 43% of Britons believe that immigration has a negative impact on society. The UK's slow economy is the fourth big issue. The past 15 years have seen the worst income growth in the UK for generations. So, there is economic stagnation, a housing crisis, a cost of living crisis, immigration, and foreign policy concerns. The Tories have not had a grip on any of these problems. Yet Sunak chose to take the biggest gamble of his political career by calling for an early election. But maybe the party was not ready, because since then, the Tory campaign has been defined by mishaps and mistakes. Well-known cabinet members have been absent on the campaign trail.
Can we come back a bit, please?
As matters on earth get out of hand, the religious British PM is now seeking divine intervention. Last week, he visited a Swaminarayan temple in London. First, he prayed. Then, he gave a campaign speech.
It is truly a great privilege to be with you all this evening. And this Mandara stands as a great statement of the contribution that this community makes to Britain. Now, I am a Hindu, and like all of you, I draw inspiration and comfort from my faith. I was proud to be sworn in as a Member of Parliament on the Bhagavad Gita. Our faith teaches us to do our duty and not fret about the outcome, as long as one does it faithfully.
Sunak did his best to win over the Hindu crowd, and this was not lost on his chief opponent, Keir Starmer of the UK Labour Party. He too decided to follow suit and visit a temple.
We need to address the everyday concerns of so many people in this country who feel disaffected by politics, who feel that on this Thursday feel either that the country's too broken to be mended, or that they can't trust politicians because of what the Tories have done after the last 14 years. We have to take that head on.
Which brings us to the next major player in this election, the Labour Party. For Labour, the campaign has run like clockwork. They had expected July 4th to be an election date, so they had spent months preparing for it. And now, this could be a once-in-a-generation result that'll usher in the party. Sunak knows this. At this point, he's most likely fighting for second place. Polls say Keir Starmer will be the next British Prime Minister. So Rishi Sunak may become the leader of the opposition. But Sunak's next big challenge is this man, Nigel Farage of the Reform Party. He has been covered in milkshake on the campaign trail, but that has done little to stop his anti-immigration spiel. He promises hard immigration reforms, much harder than what the Conservatives aimed for, and Farage has found support, mostly from some traditional Conservative voters who are now switching to the Reform Party. So while Farage is not realistically in the race to become the next Prime Minister, he is eating into Sunak's vote share. At this point, it's less about who comes into power and more about getting the Tories out. For many in Britain, this July 4th, the US will not be the only one celebrating Independence Day.